this. No, I was just showing them these 2 pages. So there's those 2 pages, guys. You'll need to pause it to look at them. Okay. All right, so the first 2 questions should be easy because we just did those on the last page. What's the amplitude? Amplitude is 3. And then the period is
1.
You got to do the formula. 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. So far, so good? All right, to find the next step. So, actually, we'll follow the steps up at the top. Step 1, we found them. Step 2, mark the y-axis according to what the amplitude is. That's going to tell you where to start and stop. So I'm going to go up 3. That's going to be the max point, and then I'm going to go down 3, and that's negative 3, and that's going to be the min point.
Hi, Celeste.
All right, so now we need to find step 3. We need to find the x-coordinates of what we call the 5 key points. Do you remember how we talked about sine is intercept, max, intercept, min, intercept? Isn't that 5 things?
Yes.
We need to take our period and split it apart so we can find what those 5 points are. If we looked at that, that's going to be 4 sections on the graph that we're trying to split up. So you're going to take your period, this is the important part right here, you're going to take your period and divide it by 4 to find what I'm going to call the increment. That's how much you have to increase by for each of our key points. So the first thing you want to do here is you want to do 2 pi divided by 4, which is pi over 2. That is your increment. So I just did this step right here. This is what we're going to call the increment. That's how much you're increasing by. It's just the period divided by 4. So all of these today are going to start at 0. So your first key point is going to be at 0. And then from there, you're supposed to take that and add on what we just said the increment's going to be. We're adding on pi over 2. What's 0 plus pi over 2? Then we're going to, again, increase by pi over 2. What's pi over 2 plus pi over 2?
2 pi.
No. 2 pi over 2. Then you have to add
Do you not simplify them?
pi over 2. We can. We'll do that in a second. It's actually easier to add all of them without simplifying them. So you get 3 pi over 2, and then you're going to add one more time. If I add pi over 2 to that, I get 4 pi over 2. So if you add them all together and then you want to simplify, you can. I'm actually not going to force you to simplify because part of what we're going to do today is a little bit easier if you don't simplify.
Do you always start with 0?
For today.
I say 0.
For today, we'll always start with 0. So now what that tells you, step 4, is those are the 5 things that you're going to put on the x-axis. Those are our x values. So actually 0 is already marked, so we're only going to mark the other 4. My suggestion is that you mark a stopping point at the end, try and cut that in half, and then try and cut each of those in half. So that way you get kind of even sections here, instead of having sections that are not even. So when you put your tick marks in, and actually mine are kind of obnoxiously large, so I'm going to just redo that. So then we put in those values. 0 is already there, so the first one's pi over 2. This is 2 pi over 2. Or if you just want to write pi, you can. This is 3 pi over 2. And this is 4 pi over 2. When you look at the back of the book, they're going to simplify the ones. They're going to have pi here, they're going to have 2 pi here. They're going to simplify them. So now that we have those marked, now we're going to mark in where the points are going to be. If you remember from the first page, I told you sine's going to start in an intercept, then it's going to go to a max, then an intercept, then a min, then an intercept. That's the pattern for sine. Intercept max, intercept min, intercept. Your last step is just to draw a nice smooth curve through those. It's right here. In step 4, intercept max, intercept min.
What's the intercept?
The intercept is on the x-axis.
Oh, so it's
That means you start on the x-axis. So when we look at number 2 here, what's the amplitude? It's 7.
Oh.
We take the absolute value of it, so the amplitude is 7, which means, and I don't think I gave you a whole lot of space here, so do your best, which means we're going to go up 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're going to go down 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. To find the period, we have to do
It's gonna be 2 pi.
2 pi divided by
2
what's b right now?
pi.
Just 1. So you get 2 pi.
Yep.
Then to find your intervals, to find how much you're increasing by, how many sections am I splitting the graph into? 4. So you do 2 pi divided by 4.
It's the same as the same.
It's pi over 2. This is the same as the last one. So we're going to start at 0 and we're going to add pi over 2. So this is going to be pi over 2. This is going to be 2 pi over 2. It's going to be 3 pi over 2. And this is 4 pi over 2. That makes sense?
But then it's really. Did you simplify it on the last one? The 4 pi over 2?
You can if you want to. That's a your call. Just realize if you see it in the book simplified that it means the same thing. So then we put those on our x-axis here. So I'm going to split this into pieces here. So it's going to be pi over 2,
What'd you put in that set?
2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2.
Zoom in.
This one's a little different though. What's different about this one compared to the last one? Just looking at the equation, what's different in the equation? There's something important. What's different? It's negative. When it's negative, instead of doing intercept max, intercept min, intercept, we're going to do intercept min. We're going to go to the negative 7 first. Intercept min, intercept max. Intercept is what your pattern is going to be. Question?
Okay, so the interval is when you divide by 4, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's how you figure out how much you're going to increase by for each of the intervals.
Okay, I was with 0 had to figure what I got.
So I'm going to start at the intercept, and then I'm going to go to that minimum point, and then intercept, and then max, and then intercept. So this is just going to be inverted compared to the last one. Because it's negative, it inverts. It goes the other way. Good?
So if this is negative, so go down first.
You go down first. You go to the negative 7 first, because it was negative 7. I'm going to go to the negative 7, then go to the positive 7. But you're always starting on the intercept for sine. You're always starting on the origin. All right, number 3. What's the amplitude? Just 1. So I'm going to go up 1. I'm going to go down 1. I can set that up right away. What's my period? 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3? So now the tricky part with this one is finding your intervals. To find the intervals, I have to take my period. That's what the whole length should be, and I have to split it into 4 pieces, don't I? So I have to do pi over 3 divided by 4. Pi over 3 divided by 4, I would write like that. I wouldn't write it as a fraction. How do you divide with fractions? Times by the reciprocal, which would be 1/4, right? Isn't this pi over 12? So we're going to start at 0, and now I'm going to add pi over 12 each time. So it's going to be pi over 12. Add another pi over 12, that's going to be 2 pi over 12. 3 pi over 12. 4 pi over 12. And again, if you want to reduce, you can. I'm not going to require you to, though, because when we do phase shifts tomorrow, it's going to be easier if we don't reduce. So I'm going to fill those in, and actually, if you split it into 4s the way I've been doing, it just looks nicer. So if you split it in half again, and then put those values in. 2 pi over 12, 3 pi over 12, 4 pi over 12. Where am I starting? No, I started in intercept first, start in the origin, and then now I'm going to the top, then intercept again, then min, then intercept.
So behind. Do we do one on our own?
Not yet. I'm going to do the next one together.
Wait, so
It's the amplitude. Number 4. Oh, it didn't move. Alright, what's the amplitude? So you're going to go up 1, you're going to go down 1. What's the period going to be? 2 pi divided by 1/5. I would write it like this. I like it like this instead. How am I going to divide by 1/5? You're going to do 2 pi times 5, which is 10 pi. That's your period. Then what do I do with the period? Divide it into 4, because we're dividing the graph into 4 sections. So that's 5 pi over 2. Starting at 0, add 5 pi over 2, you get 5 pi over 2. What happens when I add another 5 pi over 2? You get 10 pi over 2. When I add another 5 pi over 2, 15 pi over 2. Add another 5 pi over 2, you get 20 pi over 2. Again, if you want to reduce those, you can. You can write 5 pi for 10 pi over 2. Those are now our x values. So if you split this into 4s. Sure.
she said class field trip. You coming, Miss Russell? Oh no, we can show you the video.
Where does this start? Starts at 0 at the intercept. Then max, intercept, min, intercept. Can we try the number 5?
Ashley said, okay.
Why is it crumbling? Is Mo coming?
I come everywhere.
I'm going to fill this one in real quick. Amplitude is 5. Period is going to be 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. So what's my increment going to be? Pi over 4. That's what I'm going to increase by. So this is pi over 4. This is 2 pi over 4. This is 3 pi over 4. And this is 4 pi over 4. So the y-axis, I should have gone up 5 and down 5. And then the x-axis, those are my values. Pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4. If you want to reduce them, you can. That's fine. Where is this one? We're going to start on the intercept because it's sine. Then where's it going?
Down.
Going down because it's negative. Intercept, max, intercept.
Miss Russell, do you like give her A's on everything?